Testing. Okay, so I'm going to judge a little bit, prejudge here, but some of you were around when this sanctuary was built. So does anybody have any stories they want to tell about that time when we were digging this sanctuary and had to stop digging because of the landfill? Anybody have any stories to tell? So Joe Stinson isn't here, but Joe grew up right in this neighborhood and talks about walking home from school on Tyler, and you never wanted to be on the inside of the sidewalk closest to the parking lot, what we see as the parking lot, because what you tried to do was bump your friends into the landfill, because it was a pond with stuff in it, and so you had to always kind of jockey your way, like, I'm not walking on that side, you're walking on that side. And he told me about one fight he had where some boys were trying to throw him into it. And had some other brothers in the neighborhood defended him and got him from being thrown in. But, yeah, there's stories to tell. These are more handouts of the schematics. I haven't got to everybody. A concept drawing. Well, thank you for coming. So this is sort of a primer about stormwater. It's historical facts about what we have on our property, and it's imagining what we could do. And later on, I'm going to ask you if you have questions, so think about them and hold on to them. So we're going to start out with the next slide that shows what is stormwater. So stormwater is generated from rain and snowmelt, and it flows over land or impervious surfaces such as paved streets, parking lots, building roofs, and it does not soak into the ground. What is in it that shouldn't be there? So you can see on this drawing, it starts with the roof runoff, which is air pollutants. Little particles of air pollutants get into it as falls as rain, leaves, twigs, and bird feces. There's lawn runoff, clipped grass. There's fertilizer that is washed off. There's pet waste. There's motor oil on the asphalt, and then there's just street runoff of trash and other things that flow. And our storm sewers directly flow into the Mississippi River. So I'll teach you about how you can find out where your water flows from where you live in a minute. But how much do we have to deal with? So one of the factors is how much rain, if a half an inch of rain falls over 24 hours, how much water does that generate? 513,000 gallons of water. Isn't that a lot? So that's kind of what stormwater is, and that's what we're trying to deal with. Next slide, please. So where does our water go? So MWMO is Mississippi Watershed Management Organization.org. You can Google MWMO.org, Path to the River. You can click on your address, and all of a sudden it'll start showing you how the water runs through your neighborhood. Okay? This is a Google shot I took. We're not exactly on First Lutheran property here because that little shaded part to the right, for some reason, isn't working right now. So it runs up there. It goes into LaBelle Pond. Then it crosses up, it gets up to 44th Street. It does a little divot there. There's Jackson Pond, which is an overflow pond, so it can run into that, or they can bypass it if they don't need to, and then it runs over to the Mississippi. And that's what a storm sewer eventually looks like when it runs into the Mississippi. So that gives you a little visual. And like I said, within MWMO, if you live within that watershed, you can chart your path to the river. If you're not in this watershed, another watershed probably has it. So let's see. This project of looking at what we can do with our parking lot was part of our 2019 Living Connected appeal. And it was to look at what could we do with rain gardens and how could we resurface the parking lot. We were granted a $10,000 planning grant from Mississippi Watershed District to help us address the freeze-thaw-freeze cycle that was happening out here in front of the building. Remember how the asphalt was so broken up? Because the water would pool there, freeze, break up the asphalt, thaw, freeze, break up more asphalt, and we had a really dangerous walkway from the building out to the parking lot. Given our very large facility and our very large parking lot, what could we do to reduce or improve the quality of water that leaves this property? As I said in the last slide, 513,000 gallons in a half-inch rainfall over 24 hours. We want to consider how to make it safer for pedestrians and those in need of handicap parking to access the facility more easily. So how could we redesign these islands out here, primarily these first two that have aging pine trees on them? How could we reconfigure that so there'd be more handicap parking and safer walking from the parking lot to the church building? And then lastly, to resurface the entire parking lot for safety and for appearance. So we ran into challenges. One, we had this great idea. Let's put a cistern on the other side of the school, catch the water off the school roof, filter it, and use it to water our community garden. Ooh, people got so excited about this project. But because we already had an irrigation system in place, we'd have to have what they call a backflow valve between that and the city's water source to the irrigation system. And the city of Columbia Heights would not take that risk. They did not want to trust a backflow valve, so they wanted to prevent what water might run off our roof from backflowing into the city water system. And it was just too expensive. So we had to rule out the cistern. The landfill under our property. So in the 1980s, when we bought this property, I talked to Pastor Dick Mork, for quite a while one day. And he said, yeah, we knew there was some trash that had been thrown here. We knew that. But it wasn't until we'd sold the other property, moved in here, and we're worshiping in Martin Luther Hall, and we were digging for the sanctuary, that they found out the extent to which it was polluted. Anybody remember that? Building was halted for quite a while they not only tested that soil, but had to have toxic waste soil, what they call brownfields, taken out, hauled to a special landfill, and then clean fill brought in before this could be built. Now, as the parking lot was constructed out here, working with the state of Minnesota, PCA, a very thick layer of limestone was put over the whole surface of the parking lot. Excuse me. So if you hear nothing else from me today, I give a bravo to the church people of this place in the 1980s who continued this project and did it the right way. It wasn't short-circuited to try to get around building requirements of the city or the pollution control agency. You made the hard decision to stay here and to do this parking lot right. Every consultant who's come to look at that parking lot has complimented us on how well it has been put together. It is doing what it was supposed to do. That limestone cap keeps whatever's under there. It doesn't seep up. It doesn't crack up. As you may know, almost anywhere you dig around this building, if you try to dig more than about 10 inches anywhere, you're going to run into refuse. Glass bottles, cans, fish becks. The community garden, yes, raised gardens are easier, but yes, raised gardens don't dig into soil that has junk in it. So when we brought in, we could clean this up by hauling that whole landfill away. It would cost millions. So you can't put a rain garden over a landfill, because why clean all this water and then let it seep into contamination, right? So we had to look at an alternative to a rain garden, which is a filtration basin. We'll talk about that a little more. And then we'll adjust the parking lot elevation to prevent stormwater pooling with the next lift of the next surface of asphalt we put on. And then COVID-19 made this all hard because we weren't here. To get together, to talk about it, to get people involved was really complex. Okay, so the landfill, let's talk about that. These pictures you saw already. So on the left, this is a section taken from the right-hand island, just on the other side of the right-hand island as you walk out. By the time they got to 5 feet down, the smell of petroleum became overwhelming. The parts per million of petroleum in that soil was exceptionally high. So how did petroleum get into landfill? Well, up until the 60s, 70s, there was no municipal waste removal. How many people changed the oil in their cars at home? And when you had used oil, what did you do with it? Let's go dump it in the landfill. So we found that. The second hole, which is in the next island on the other side, was full of construction materials. These were ribbons of aluminum, and there was insulation, and we had it tested, and it also included asbestos. So a carcinogen and a pollutant. The last one, I'm sorry it's hard to see, but there's a tractor tire, a steel tractor tire. Can you see kind of a bent circle in there? That's down by the storm sewer, and we found tractor parts. We found exhaust. We found a wheel from a very old tractor. And that was just, usually when you test soil now, you do soil borings where you take 2 inch or something of depth. We decided that because we knew this was a landfill, it would be better if we did an excavation that was about 2 by 2 feet and down as deep as the excavator could go so we could test that soil. So that's what we did in this study phase. Let's see. And so Joe Stinson's got some great stories if you ever want to ask him. So here's what we've done so far. With the grant from MWMO and some money from First Lutheran Church, we were able to grind up the whole lane of asphalt here. And you know that in this time, 90% of asphalt is recycled. So when a parking lot is destroyed, they grind it up into gravel-sized pieces, and they use it in place of gravel. So they ground up that lane, dug it out a little more, and then put gravelled that asphalt over before they put that new lane in. We'd like to remove and redesign the 2 islands in the lot that are overgrown evergreens. Like I said, creating closer handicap parking, safer pedestrian entry, a more welcoming entrance to the facility. And then down by the storm sewer, we want to create a filtration basin to help filter water that rolls down the parking lot. And we had to rule out the cistern. So estimated cost of the project. This is not a formal bid. This is what's called an opinion of cost by a consultant who estimates all the expenses as they could and estimates them high so that we have no surprises. So the cost of the raised gardens and this new entrance area here, $116,500. The filtration basin is $113,000, of which our consultant estimates that $43,000 will just be to excavate the brownfield and haul it to a toxic waste dump. So that has to be hauled out of the cities some distance. And then the parking lot resurfaced, $121,500. That's a total of $350,000. We anticipated when we were doing the appeal that it would cost about $250,000 to do this project. So you can see we are disappointed in the cost and have some big issues to deal with because it's a lot of money. We are going to apply for a grant from the Mississippi Watershed District for construction. We have to have that application in this week, and they will award it in the winter, and we can get up to $50,000. Every meeting that Julie and I have had with the MWMO, they are fascinated by our project. This is the first landfill project they've had, and this is the city of Minneapolis all the way to Fridley. So we feel very strongly that they're going to give us $50,000 to help with this. But I also said to them, that's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. And so Julie had a conversation with the state of Minnesota on Friday about how to get a grant to help us haul away toxic soil. We're going to talk to the Anoka County Conservation District. We're going to talk to waterlegacy.org. And we're actually going to talk to the women of the ELCA who may give us a small grant for this project. But we're going to go looking for money and see what we can do. So it's a lot. In the handouts that you have, these are not created as slides because I wasn't technically capable of doing that this weekend. But these have been perforated, stapled in the upper right-hand corner. So page 1, I'll walk you through this. If you all make sure that goes the opposite way of what you expect, right? So this is how it looks today. And then you flip it over, and both of these are concept drawings. So this one is a concept drawing, and this one is a concept drawing of what it would look like if we created a green space here. And as you can see, there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 handicap parking spaces. And in the very center, we would create just a sidewalk to come into the building. So you wouldn't be able to drive your car any longer from the parking lot to the entrance through those islands. But we think that makes it safer for pedestrians. There's plenty of ways to get to your parked car without having to drive between those two sets of trees. And then down here in the lower corner is the size of the filtration basin. And everything that's attached after that are drawings that have to do with this, about elevation, type of plants that would be used, etc. If you look at what I call page 7, this is the filtration basin design. Kind of shows you how it works. So in a rain garden, how many of you have coneflowers in your garden somewhere? Purple coneflowers? So purple coneflowers are native plants that we love to put into rain gardens because a purple coneflower grows to about this height. Its roots are 2 or 3 times deeper than that when all is said and done. So plants like that and the plants we have out here in front in the landscaping all have super deep roots that can filter pollution that's in water. And they collect it in their roots. So there are schematics here of flowering perennials and shrubs that we would put. But in a filtration basin, as opposed to a rain garden would let the water seep through into the ground. But because of the landfill, we don't want that. Why should we spend all that money to clean water and put it into the dirtiest spot in the parking lot? So the filtration basin has a collection tank in it. And that cleaner water will be collected below here, run into a pipe into this filtration basin, and when it's full, it'll pump it into the storm sewer. And so it will be cleaner water by 30% is the estimate. Yeah, that's the filtration basin. That's the plantings on top. That's down in the far southeast corner of the lot. So if you want to know how water flows in the lot, right now take a look at where there's dust and sand in our lot. You can see that the elevation is very poor down on this east side of the lot because there's sand and silt and now getting to be leaves sitting across there. I've been taking pictures of trash in the parking lot for just fun. So Julie's going to write down questions that you have that we may or may not be able to answer today. So what questions do you have? Yes, the limestone stays where, but we'll be taking it out in the place where the filtration basin is. That'll be dug out and taken away with the other pollutants that are there. No, we are not taking any asphalt out beyond that. Yeah. We're going to put a new layer, a new lift of asphalt over the existing lot. Again, bravo to First Lutheran Church in the 80s for putting in such a high-quality asphalt parking lot. It is, like I said, we are continually praised for how well done that project was completed. Yeah, I mean, think we're this far down the road and it's still really good. It doesn't need to be replaced. Bob, we would lose a few parking spaces. I don't have the calculation of that, but I would guess it's not more than 10. And I watch on Sunday mornings. Jeffrey and I are about the only ones over there right now. Yes, we have a maintenance plan every spring after the snow and ice melt. It'll need to be, the filtration basin will need to be cleaned out. It'll, whatever, leaves, sticks, trash come in over the winter. And then there's a maintenance list to be done 2 more times each year to check it to make sure it's operating properly. And for the first year or 2 years, Earth Wizards, who's designing it, would come out and help us that first time to assess how to clean it out and train us so that we do it properly. Yeah, Pam. An arborist in the design. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a dead maple tree over here on the berm. Yeah. Yeah, some trees don't live forever, right? Yeah. Other questions? Anybody want to see my new master's degree in water management? Things you never learned in seminary. Yeah, Bob. Well, we'll look and try to find as many grants as we can. And our hope is that at the annual meeting in January, we'll present a bid for what we're going to do, what we think will come in with grants, and then the congregation will have to decide if they want to continue to pay this out of the Living Connected appeal, or if there's some other way we can finance it. That's on the next slide, I think. I think you're go to the next one, then we'll come back to this one. So submit grant applications, confirm bids. So Earth Wizards is the only company we've identified that does both asphalt work and this kind of water mitigation work. Everybody else we'd have to hire someone to be a general contractor, and we could find a company that would do the asphalt work, somebody else that would do the filtration basin and these 2 islands here, and kind of divide it up. So that's how we'll get bids on this project. And then we'd like to present it at the annual meeting with the work to be done next year. Does that help, Bob? Christine? Right. Part of what everybody pledged to the Living and Connected is what we said we would use to help fund this. We expected we would have $250,000 to do that. But the bids, as you saw, were $100,000 more than that. So here are the questions I think we all have to ask as people of God. We want to go to the other one. So God calls us to be stewards of creation. In Genesis chapter 1, God said, let us create humankind in our own image, in the image of God, let us create them. And God said, let them be stewards over all creation. Have dominion over the fish, the birds, the cattle, over all the wild animals and every creeping thing. So rule over dominion is not about exploitation, but about the one who tends and cares for creation. So thinking about who inherits this from us. Secondly, I think a sense of Christian ethics. With what we know, what can we do now that continues the good work of this congregation in the 1980s? We want to build on the legacy of what this church did in the 80s when it moved here and took on this, what we thought was a minor issue, which was really a major issue. to think about the common good and in thinking about the future generations. We don't want to pass the buck.
Okay. I might just use. I'm just going to look at the slides up here that she has. So, and for some of you that don't know me, I'm Julie Wilson, the Operations and Finance Manager. A couple of faces maybe. So yeah, additionally, for the common good for future generations, as Bonnie was mentioning, and that is certainly something we've talked a little bit about. Thank you. A little bit about, there's so much going on in our world right now, right, with COVID and all kinds of things, and how this is really even a bigger umbrella issue than that, as it's something it's a acute issue we're dealing with COVID right now. But this is really the future of our world and our grandchildren and our children. There's some of these, seeing what we can do. What's our responsibility right now? Do you want to keep going?
Thanks, Julie. The last one is we already have stormwater utility fees that we paid in the city of Columbia Heights. As municipalities have encountered the rising amounts of stormwater that are coming in much bigger amounts, they are charging their tenants, their residents, and their businesses for stormwater cleanup. Our last bill was $1,200 for 1 quarter. We have to look at the bigger picture of how much it is over a year. We have more investigation to do with that. Our consultant told us that there's a church in South Minneapolis with a similar sized facility and a smaller parking lot. Their annual assessment is $40,000 a year to the city of Minneapolis. So those stormwater utility fees are going to be an increasing way that municipalities are learning that they can help fund some of their operations. So if we can clean the water when it leaves, we get a discounted rate. If we reduce the amount of water that leaves, we get a discounted rate. Any other questions? Yeah, can I have that? Yeah. It's sealed by that limestone on top. Yeah, but it's not going to, the plastic that's in there, the glass, the metal, it's not going to go away anytime soon. All right, will you close with me in prayer? This is from Lutheran World Federation. Creating God, your name is written on every leaf, every bird, every river, every stone, every living being. We praise and worship you for the magnificence of your creation. Make us attentive to the wounds of the earth and willing to look for the healing of the whole creation. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. Thank you for your time and attention today. We gave them a lot of documents that we didn't share with you today that have to do with just pictures of things that have happened. But we'll continue to make these documents available so that people can talk about it and review it and ask good questions. This is not something we asked for, right? But God will help us find a way through it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Drew.